Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is the first show for 2026, and it's going to be an exciting one. It's wonderful to have you here, but I've got a question. Have you thought about demographics lately? Well, it is something we're going to learn more about because today I have the renowned demographic strategist, Bradley Schurman. Bradley is going to be a speaker at South by Southwest, and he understands demographics like nobody else. He has books. He's got a book called The Super Age, and he's got another one. If it's not out already, it's coming out soon. He is the founder of Human Change, a global advisory firm that helps organizations build resilient strategies for labor and consumer markets. And for those of you who may not know me, I'm Lori Carpenter. I'm an interior designer and founder of The Third Phase, a platform designed for individuals 60 plus, where we discuss all things about home, health, and wealth, and community. It's a free private Facebook group, so join us there and join the conversation that we carry on after the show is over. It's at facebook.com/groups/ the third phase. Now let's welcome our guest on, Bradley. This is so exciting. I am excited to see his new book coming out. Bradley, are you with us? Ah,
Corey, how are you?
hello.
Good
It
to
is
see
so,
you.
hey, it's so wonderful to have you here. I've been so excited. I've been following along on you, and I'm telling you, you think deep. You think outside the box, and it makes me stop and think. So thank you for sharing all the things you do share.
Well, I'm glad I can help you think deeper. I try to
Yes.
present the world in a little bit different light because we're
You
going through some of the most massive changes that we've ever experienced as a civilization, and it's hard to keep up at times.
Oh, it is. It is. And, I have thought about demographics, and all of that, but I really didn't understand it so much until I started following you and you explain it so well. But
Thank you.
first of all, Bradley, as we start this new year, this is my first show and it will be a podcast. So I'm very excited about that. But you wrote in Substack, which I really love following you there as well as LinkedIn, but you made five big predictions for 2026. What were those predictions? I'd love for our group to hear those.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of big things that are happening this year, but I think certainly for this audience, one of the prevailing trends that's been uh, kind of developing since the pandemic is that we are running into a labor shortage nationwide. And while there's been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and layoffs and how people are really going to struggle to find work, that doesn't really meet reality because for decades we've been having fewer kids. In
Mhm.
fact, in the United States, and frankly, most of the West, and including the developed nations, the highly developed nations of East Asia, birth rates have been well below replacement rate for over a decade now,
Wow.
almost 20 years. And now those smaller populations are showing up in the labor market, and we just don't have enough people to do the jobs. So, one of the things that I expect will become a prevailing trend over the course of this year is that we'll be talking a lot more about older workers and the need to engage people past those retirement years in work, and not just work, but also consumerism. Because this is an opportunity to, as I often say, grab hold of the parachute for the landing, because otherwise we're going to have a hard fall. And older customers, older workers present a really unique opportunity for businesses. How quickly businesses pivot into this will be a bit of a question mark, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I said, we're going through a period of really dramatic change. So there's so many different variables to consider. But if you're not thinking about an older customer right now, an older worker right now, you're missing the opportunity that sits right at your feet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Anything else in those predictions that would be great for this third phase?
Well, I think that, there are a lot of things that people have to keep their eyes open for right now, that are included in the predictions, but also just included in the reality of everyday life. And perhaps, the biggest one is that there just are shifts happening. So even though those predictions came out just a few weeks ago, we're certainly starting to see some movement in other areas as well that, I- perhaps weren't fully considered, just before the holidays as we closed out the year. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly think that, for people that are in this third phase of life, I think that one of the things that's relatively underreported right now is the growth of the market. If you're invested in the market, this year looks like it's going to be a banner year for the stock market. I've spoken with a number of different financial advisors, and they're predicting about a 15% return on the market this year. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be saying, well, wait a second here. Like, I've heard about these layoffs, like, people seem to be struggling around the holidays. What does that really mean? How can the market be doing so well? And I think that folks need to understand that the market is not Main Street. That's the biggest thing. So
Yes.
what you see happening on Main Street doesn't translate to investments. And because of that, the way investments are done and achieved, make you have to think a little bit different about how that works. And I think what we're seeing right now nationwide is a big amount of money coming back into the financial system because of the tax bill. That's a pretty substantial amount of money that's being freed up. We're also seeing, I can't actually remember in my lifetime when we've seen such rapid deregulation of industry. I think Reagan was the last one to attempt something at this scale. And then, of course, artificial intelligence. So, artificial intelligence is going to be finding a lot of efficiencies in theory in the system, and efficiencies are great for business. So, if you're invested, obviously consult your financial advisor. Don't take advice from me, please. Don't take advice from me. I am not a financial advisor. My financial advisor had to talk me down earlier this year. But I think that the signals are pretty clear that it's going to be a relatively good year if you got money in the market.
Great. Great. That's great to hear. What are three ideas of how my listeners can use these predictions to create a new business opportunity for their companies?
Well, I actually think that artificial intelligence in particular is going to be a great force multiplier, and I fundamentally believe that if you haven't started using AI, you need to figure it out real quick. And
Absolutely.
and I know this may sound a bit redundant for folks, but many of you used a computer in your workplace. Can you imagine if you didn't make that transition from typewriter to computer, where you'd be? Um, it
Yeah.
just, you would not be able to survive in the workplace. And that's a similar thing with artificial intelligence right now. What I found with artificial intelligence, I use it, these large language models. I use them pretty often. I was an early adopter of artificial intelligence, and what I found is that it can actually really streamline a lot of my work. So I
Hmm.
think we're actually going to see longer term. This is a longer term prediction here. I think we're going to see a lot more people minted as millionaires because of artificial intelligence. So you don't have to take the risk of
Interesting.
hiring a lot of people and having a lot of
Hmm.
FTEs and all the legal stuff that comes with that, the financial obligations, et cetera. There are agents now with artificial intelligence can handle your scheduling, that can handle a lot of your workflow. If you're selling directly to customers, a lot of that work can be done in the back end as well. I think there's a
Wow.
great opportunity for people to be true entrepreneurs now without assuming nearly as much risk as they would have had to do just 5, 10 years ago. So there's a
Wow.
great amount of opportunity there.
Yeah.
but you have to learn the platforms. You have to understand the platforms.
Right.
And, I say often that, there are three things that people really need to have in order to make this kind of big transition to new
Mm-hmm.
tech. And the first is creativity. Like, you've got to have a creative mind. The second is you have to be curious. Like, this is a
Mm-hmm.
brand new being. I'm not to attach a life to artificial intelligence, but it is effectively a brand new
Right.
being. And you have to be a good communicator because um, we have to learn a new language to talk to this technology, and we have to learn how to respond to it, and we have to learn how to adjust. So those are the three C's that I say are really the things you need to get ahead
Mm-hmm.
with this. But if you lean into it, and you are really kind of deliberate in how you approach it, you're certainly going to have, I think, a great time using it. Now, the one thing I would caution, just like with any tech, is you have to be very, very deliberate in how you're using it. Um, I think of artificial intelligence right now as like a good assistant or a good junior employee
Mm-hmm.
on my team. So if you were a manager or if you had junior people on your team when you were working, if you're still working, you know that you can't trust everything they hand you. you can't
That's
take
true.
it you can't take it for rote. So if you think through that lens and you really say to yourself, okay, what I'm getting is a first draft, not a final draft, you're going to come out a lot further ahead.
A good
And
point.
yeah, and I think that's really just important for folks. I see plenty of people that are using artificial intelligence and everything that it spits out, they're like, look at this, look at this. No, you can't treat it that way. Like, second guess everything, and you will always get a better result when you're pushing it to do more.
Is there a platform to teach you the language
Well,
that you know of?
There are certainly coursework that's out there now. I mean,
Yeah.
I always say that, as fact, I just got off a conversation before coming on with you today, that people should always take a look at kind of those traditional educational institutions first within their community to
Mm-hmm.
see what they're offering. Community colleges are often, a great place to start. It's a resource that we often, don't think about as top of mind because we think of it as only, teaching trades or for filling in gaps for labor around certain things like nursing assistants, construction, et cetera. But community colleges often do a great job at this.
Good
And
point.
not to sound too redundant here, but like YouTube is phenomenal for learning. And the more you're able to tap into YouTube and really lean into the resources that are there from experts, the better off you'll be. And I think you'll often find that if you get onto a platform like LinkedIn, you can certainly learn from the experts that are on there. That's the one kind of crazy thing about the world we live in right now is that the ability to educate ourselves is so easy.
It
We have so many resources, more resources than we ever had when we were kids,
ever
and
had.
ever, and I think we can't get any more, but somehow every year we get more things to learn and more access to tools that we would have never dreamed of.
Right.
um, it's all about just identifying those, tapping into those things, being curious, creative, and communicative, and like really like leaning into the future because the future doesn't wait for anybody.
No.
um, and if you dig your heels in, as some people do, I see people do it all the time with new technologies, you'll get passed up. There'll always be somebody else that's right there ready to do the new tech, do the new work.
Yeah.
But keep your human side because that is essential to a really successful work life.
Yes. How should entrepreneurs in their 60s think differently about retirement? Do you think the word retirement itself should be retired?
I mean, I think retirement, as we know it, is dead.
Yeah.
I wrote that in my book, The Super Age Decoding Our Demographic Destiny. That book came out in 2022. And yeah, retirement as we know it is dead.
Yeah.
And it's been transitioning for some time now. It's going to continue to transition. It's being driven by a lot of forces, demographics being a big force that's pushing us into that future.
Hmm.
But also the fact that our social programs, things like Medicare, things like Medicaid, things like Social Security, these things are dying. And whether we like to admit it or not, um, they're going to be fundamentally different in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you are in that 60-ish range or
Mhm.
60 plus range, you should be anticipating a significant loss of Social Security income in the next 5 years.
Wow.
Um, because if there isn't a fix, and no political party, let me be clear about this, no political party is offered a fix, you will see on average about a 20 to 25% decrease in your monthly payments. It doesn't go away. Social Security doesn't go away, but it will decrease substantially. And if there isn't a fix to Medicare, you will see your insurance premiums go up. And,
Yeah.
so you've got like this double whammy coming at
Yeah.
you. So when I would say to an entrepreneur that is in their 60s or even above, is take that into account and take that into your risk assessment of whether or not to start a business and what financial resources you should put into that business. People cash out their 401ks to start a business. I never think that's the good idea,
Mm-mm.
um, because that's your nest egg. And if you get rid of it, you're not going to be able to build it back up
You're
because you've
right.
been building that now for decades in most cases. So lower risk, lower reward, maybe, but still a reward
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah. Another question here for business owners or 60s, 70s who want to keep working, but in smarter, more sustainable ways. What
Mhm.
changes should they be making in their business model?
Well, I think that there's a couple things here. I would unpack this in a couple different ways. The first is technology. Obviously, we've touched on
Mm-hmm.
that. How can you use technology to streamline your work? Ask that question all the time. Like, what can tech do to lighten my load? The second thing, I think that if you do own your business already, and it has been in operation for a while, you should ask one question every day, and that's, what is my succession plan?
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the most important questions any business owner, especially if they're a long term business owner, should be asking themselves, because you want a nice parachute into retirement. What does that parachute look like for you? It reminds me of that book, What Color is My Parachute?
Yes,
But
I was just
like,
thinking of that
yeah,
one.
but it's the same idea. It's the same kind of general idea, is what do I want my future to be? What do I want to be when I grow up?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be as financially secure as possible. So if you have a business and somebody's interested in purchasing it, what does that purchase then look like? Are you able to stay involved with the business in some way? Some businesses are very personality driven. So you're an important part of that business's success. You're going to want the person who's purchasing your business might want to keep you on. You might want to stay on as well, perhaps in a more limited capacity. So you're not working those 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks or more in some
Right.
cases. You ratchet down more to an advisory role. And I can tell you, in my own family, that's happened. My father is still active in his business. He's 75 years old. But it's a much more diminished role. My brother is purchasing the business from him. So he's still receiving an income from that business. My brother's taking the business on, purchasing a little bit of it each year. Like, it's a good deal for them. And I think that more
Perfect.
people should be keeping an eye open for those opportunities. There's also a lot of businesses out there too that have great recurring revenue. They're businesses that are already established, they effectively run themselves, and because there is such a large exit right now from the workforce and business ownership, a number of these businesses are effectively available for a relatively good price. And they're not the sexiest businesses either. We're talking about car washes and dry cleaners, and these are good returning revenue businesses for people to buy into. They've got their established customer base. They often have their established branding. They don't require much physical labor because they have, basically a management team in place and employees. But that person wants to get out of it. So it depends where you are in the spectrum of kind of being that 60 plus. If you're right at 60, that might be a really attractive option for you to buy something and hold on to it for 5 or 10 years or 15 years or more. But if you're on the upper end, you may want to think about transitioning out of that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Hiring is a huge challenge for businesses. How do the demographic shifts, thinking about where their customers or clients and opportunities are coming from, are going to come from? What do you think uh, that challenge is? And I think you probably touched on it.
Yeah, I mean,
Is
I think that
possibly older.
yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity with older customers right now. There's no denying that. Um, but I don't think that we've been very clear about what that opportunity is. Like you'll hear a lot of folks talk about the longevity economy and its value, and nearly 9 trillion in spending and blah 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 blah. Um, yeah, that's all true, but there's different categories of customers within that. So I like to slice and dice that grouping of people, and I don't really like the age brackets on things, but statistically there are age brackets. So let me give you a sense of what those are. Basically, people 50 to 64, prime income earners, spending at a high rate, really attractive customer looking at a lot of goods and services. People 65 to 74 are spending as much or more than they did when they were prime income earners. These are the people that are transitioning to like travel and lifestyle stuff, really enjoying those first 10 years or so of the retirement. And then after that 10 years elapsed, that's what I'm saying. The numbers aren't perfect here, but these are kind of general rules.
Right.
Um, Around 75 plus, consumer spending just died. And people move to maintenance spending. So they're more focused on upkeep of their home, they're more focused on healthcare, they're more focused on these other things. So where does the opportunity really exist? Well, it exists everywhere in the 50 plus, but it's different for these different segments. So when somebody says to me, oh, well, the technology opportunity for the 50 plus is so great. Yes, but there's a big yes, but there. Like if it's a technology that's monitoring health outcomes, um, yeah, that might be great for like somebody who's 75 plus. If it's a technology that's helping me lose weight, well, that might be great for somebody who's like 50 to 64. So
Mm-hmm.
it really depends on what the business is. But I fundamentally believe that the future of products and services are inclusive. So the more you can build an inclusive product or service, one that considers people across ages, in particular, the better off you're going to be because you're going to be able to reach a greater market share. And the only way you do that successfully is by hiring people who are older workers or bringing older adults into the design process early and often. And then, of course, bringing them into the marketing and communications part of of the selling of the product too. Because I have seen companies like BMW, for example, they are one of the more advanced companies when it comes and one of the longest term companies in terms of thinking about older workers and older customers, not only engaging older workers well past retirement age at their plants around the world, not only building products and services that really meet an intergenerational customer, but when they came to marketing, they fell on their face
Hmm.
because marketing agencies tend to be younger. They tend to be young
Yeah.
people that work in them, and young people don't have the lived experience of being older. Like if you have a 20 something, they don't have the experience of being a 40 something, much less an 80 something. And the vast majority of people who are buying cars, especially luxury cars, are 70 plus. So it really depends. So I always advise folks to think very carefully about who their market is, what their product is, and then how they want to sell it. And I would never, ever, ever try to sell a product to a woman without talking to a woman about it. Why would I ever think I could sell a product to somebody who was 75 years old if I'd never lived that product, lived to that age? It's just
Right.
silly. And there's a great amount of hubris that comes with companies that think they can do that.
Good point. Good point. You're right on. You're spot on. I'm glad you're saying this here on my show. Wow. Wow. Let's see here. Hiring challenges. How do the demographic shifts, thinking about where their customers, clients, and opportunities coming from are going to come from?
For businesses in particular,
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah,
yeah,
businesses. Hmm.
I mean, I think there's always opportunity. But I do think, again, going back to that point about inclusion, like we just had fewer kids for so long that
Hmm.
the younger markets have gotten very small. They're still there, but Gen Z, which is now, a good probably half of them are adults now.
Hmm.
They're roughly the size of Gen X, which is a really small generation.
Right.
Um, Gen Alpha, which is right behind them, is even smaller. And Gen Beta, the first ones which are being born this year, um, they're on track to be even smaller than that.
Wow.
So, you know, if you think holistically and long term, demographics are funny. I always say demographics are like water, and water is a force, but it's a very slow moving force, and it can really cause a lot of damage if you don't pay attention to it. So these are not immediate problems, demographics. They're not immediate challenges, but they do present long-term ones. So
Yes.
for businesses that are only focused on, quarterly earnings reports, they're not thinking about older adults. They're not thinking about inclusive products and services. They're thinking about, how do I make money this quarter so I can show my shareholders that I've done my job. Um, I often say that it takes a pinch to make a business move. And that pinch can show up in terms of the inability to hire the right talent. So they look broader, they look outside of the traditional working age population of 16 to 64. Um, they might see a pinch when it comes to the products and services they're selling, and they may
Hmm.
say, "Oh, geez, we don't have the right market to sell our product anymore." And I think that you have to look abroad, because abroad, tell people, countries that are outside of the United States have dealt with this demographic shift for years longer than us. And I think Japan is one of those key examples. I know this will sound a bit cringe, so apologies to anyone who's listening, but it's been about 15 years now since Japan started making more incontinence products for older adults than diapers for babies. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so like that's a big shift. And
Yeah.
I was just talking today about how in the UK this year they will likely have more deaths than births. Um, these are all really big things. They have long-term implications for society, for business, for the economy, but it
Yeah.
always takes a pinch. It always takes a pinch for a business to move. BMW would never have moved into engaging older workers if they didn't have a labor shortage.
Right. Right.
They would have never built better products and services for older adults had they not felt that pinch. And now engaging people for a long time within manufacturing has become the norm, especially for high end manufacturing. But it took the pinch. It took the pinch for that to happen.
Interesting. Um, okay, for entrepreneurs who are considering adding consulting, board advisory work, or new revenue streams, what demographic trends suggest where the biggest opportunity may lie?
Oh, that's a broad question. um, I think for demographic trends, I think certainly from my point of view, one of
Hmm.
the biggest things to keep an eye on right now is the great wealth transfer. That is, I think, probably the number one headline that's happening right now, because so much wealth is moving from older adults to their kids and their grandkids. There's a huge market opportunity here, and it's one that affects everybody. It affects the financial services industries, it affects the insurance industries, it affects real estate. there's a lot of, I think, interest around that right now. Um, and certainly a lot of attention. I mean, I think the other places to look are anything around multi-generational living. And the reason I share this, and it probably will be a surprise to folks, um, a full 1 out of 5 people in America now live in a multi-generational household. And we define multi-generational households as having at least 3 generations under one roof. So that is becoming a norm in this country. We also have the other trend at the other end of this, where there are more people living as singles later in life.
Yeah.
So there is another market opportunity around that. How do you serve these different populations, both a multi-generational and a solo ager, as they're called?
Yes.
Um, and I think that those are places to keep your eye on
No.
things. Um, Now, for in terms of like real building opportunities, you know, I think anything that can adapt to what we're headed is going to be an opportunity. I mean, that's
Hmm.
probably sounds like a whiff of an answer, but
Hmm.
it touches on everything. Like
Yeah.
demographics touches on everything. That's the one thing that we can't ignore. I think perhaps for risk, if people are curious about risk in particular,
Hmm.
is that there will be parts of the country where entire towns will basically start shutting down.
Yeah.
We will have ghost towns. We're going to have a lot more people, not a larger percentage, but a lot more people living with dementia in the coming years.
Mm.
That's something that's both a challenge and an opportunity. um, but yeah, the list kind of goes on and on. I can't point you to a single place because it affects everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Okay. Lastly, if you could give one piece of advice to a 60 plus business owner
Mhm.
who wants their company to remain relevant, profitable, and fulfilling through, let's say, 2030, what would it be and why?
Mm. I mean, this would depend really on the industry that you're in.
Okay.
And I would be able to give a much more tailored response, I think, if I knew what the industry was. But I think for businesses, let's talk about businesses that touch on customers,
Uh
like
huh.
actually like retail type customers.
Okay.
I think that the prevailing trend in the coming years is what's known as the phygital space.
Digital.
um, Phygital. So that's both physical and digital. So
Oh.
you can't
Mm-hmm.
just have a physical product. You can't just have a digital product. You need to find a way to align the two and offer both a good online experience as well as a good analog brick and mortar
Yeah.
experience. Um, I think that's important because I think that not only do um, people kind of inherently crave that, younger people are actively seeking it out,
Mm-hmm.
and young people are certainly a pipeline of customers into the marketplace, and they're good to grab right now if you can. I think that it really will depend though on the business. Because if you're a lawyer and you've got your shingle outside for the past 50 years, it's a much different it's a much different question for a
Okay.
business like
Well,
that.
just for example, because I'm an interior designer, as a
Well,
designer.
I will tell you as a designer, like your entire industry is ripe for opportunity right now. And I think that the single biggest thing that anyone in interior design in particular should be paying attention to is, how do you keep people independent? How do you keep people living in their home longer? Because they want to stay in their home as long as possible. They want to be independent and free from a long-term care living environment if they can't. And it's not just because of I think the general ick factor of long-term care. It's expensive. It's really freaking expensive. you
It
know
is crazy
i
expensive.
i live here in DC, and I know this is an expensive city. um but like, it's upwards of $20,000 a month now to
Yeah.
live in assisted living.
Yeah.
um and I tell folks all the time, like, I certainly think 60 is a prime age. to be thinking about this, but it's not the only age to be thinking about this. Take a look at your household, and a
Mhm.
designer, especially somebody who is they call them certified aging in place CAP,
Caps. Hmm.
certified
That's
aging in place
me. I'm
specialist.
that.
Yeah, there you go. CAPS can really help you understand like whether or not your house is going to work for you or work against you. And if you're just working off of today's dollars, I'm not sorry to pivot too far to the customer on this, but if like you're really thinking about like you got to think about the question, is this house going to work for me or is it going to fight
Right.
me?
Yeah.
And I got news for folks. Your house is going to fight you at some point.
Yeah.
And your house is going to win unless you make the modifications. So if you take just today's dollars, assuming like on the low end,
Hmm.
uh,
Oh, I've lost you. I've lost our sound.
can you hear me?
Yeah. Now. Okay.
Strange. I got a pop up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm back.
Okay.
Uh, no, I was saying if you have, you just talk about those dollar figures. Say, assume at the very low end it's $10,000 a month because you're
Uh-huh.
going to have to pay for assisted living. If
Yeah.
you just put that $10,000 a month into a renovation for your house,
Hmm.
it's $120,000. You can do a hell of a lot with $120,000.
You bet you can make it where you can stay there.
Yes, I mean, but you got to really assess it,
Yeah.
and a CAPS can certainly help you do that. It doesn't have to feel medical. It can,
No, there is so many things out there now that we try to, as a designer, that's one reason for my third phase is to live vibrantly and to
yeah.
stay at home, to
You
age in
know,
place.
when my mom and dad read my book, they really took it to heart, and they were living in an 1895 Victorian. It was like
Um,
4,500 square feet and 3 stories, and it had a garage down a hill, and everything
oh
about it
goodness.
was gorgeous. But it started fighting them. It
Yeah.
really started fighting them, and it was a very emotional decision that they made. But they sold their house. They bought a new one in the same town because they love the town they're in.
Hmm.
And they renovated it, they gutted
Yeah.
it. And they're the extreme when they basically took a blank slate and said, this
Yeah.
is what we're going to do. But it is their forever home.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like it when you enter. People have this idea that when you build inclusively or when you think about ADA, that
Hmm.
a place is going to look immediately like a hospital.
Right.
And that is not the truth. So I
That's
think for
not
an
the truth
interior
at all.
for an interior designer, I think that if you're willing to sell independence and freedom, which are two things we hold near and dear to our hearts
Hmm.
here, there's nothing that is going to grant you more independence and freedom than doing some modifications to your home.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, I tell you what, I could talk to you for hours on end, which I do listen to you hours on end, but I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you so much for being on my show today. I don't want to keep you any longer, though I would like to, but oh my goodness, you have shared so much valuable information with us today, and I thank you so much for that.
Well, it's my pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and how does everyone find you?
Best way to get me is on my website at behumanchange.com. If you're interested in my newsletter, I do weekly updates on demographics, market trends, etc., as well as a weekly podcast. You can find me at populationnext.com. That's
Population Next?
populationnext.com.
Mhm.
And you can grab my book, The Super Age, of course, on
Yes.
Amazon or any national retailer.
Now, do you have a new book coming out?
I do. I have started writing it. It's called The Geography of Prosperity, A New Map of the American Dream. And
Oh,
MIT Press is publishing it. I'm on a national reporting tour right now. I'm about almost halfway through writing it, but it'll come out in
right.
2027. So
Okay. I
we
wasn't
got
sure.
we got some time until that day comes.
Great. Great.
There is the lot in that takes the next step from the super age, really going past just thinking about demographics to thinking about place and how where we live really influences our prosperity. And it's not just the money you make, it's the life you're able to lead based on
I
where you
think
live.
that is where we're going is it's about the life we lead and how important
Exactly.
that is. Oh, Bradley, thank you so much.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate it very, very much, and I look forward to seeing you on all of these channels.
It was good meeting you. Thanks so much for
You
having me.
too. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.